So are we live now?
Yeah, says
Yeah,
we
can
are.
you? I'm just going to fix the audio. Oh, am I coming through loud and clear?
I can hear you perfect, Mike.
Good. That was my main concern. I was getting all day. I've just worked out how to use StreamYard, and I was fretting all day, thinking this is going to go wrong. But it's coming through nice and clear. So I
Yeah,
don't even have.
stream. It's a pain in the ass. StreamYard. Yeah.
When I do the Patreon stream with Piz, I use my phone. But to live stream on YouTube, you've got to have 1,000 subscribers to use your phone. So I'm
Right.
that's my laptop, and I don't really use my laptop that much because I just don't
Mhm.
really have much. I just find mobile phones, cell phones are just easier. So, but
Yeah, I use my phone. Like I'm on my phone right now. I have a Galaxy Note, and I'm probably due for an upgrade. I'm gonna get the newer version soon, but I mean, I don't really care too much for it, you know.
yeah,
So yeah, you know.
it's just yeah. I mean, I suppose like 10 years ago, people didn't have much choice but to use a desktop or a laptop, but mobile phone. I'd say mobile,
Yeah.
say cell phone, but they're so powerful now that desktops and laptops. Unless you're really into your tech.
Yeah.
I don't really use it now. I mean, obviously, but obviously with this, I want to start doing some live streams. So dug out the desk, dug out the laptop.
Yeah, man,
I'm
you got your channel going. Congrats.
going to
Keep
start
it
doing
going.
some. I'm going to start doing trying to do some reviews and stuff. I'm going to try and edit a bit. Just watching what Piz does, and I'm never going to be at his level, but I see some
Well,
people
you
who
can't
do.
say that. You really can't say that. Like, me, if I put enough work into YouTube, I just like, I don't care about it that much,
Yeah,
but if that's something that you want to do, then I would encourage you go for it, man. Don't look at the next person and say that, oh, he's got this many views and he's got that many views
yeah,
because, do your own thing, do what you want to do and do what makes you happy, man. You know what I mean? So, you know, eh, like right now, we're doing the Friday the 13th live stream. So do another one in like 2 weeks, maybe a different
okay, yeah,
top,
yeah,
maybe
yeah. I
a
mean,
different topic, different movie. You could do
yeah, yeah,
you could do movie reviews, just kind of switch it up, and as time goes on, your subscribers will grow, so you just can't, not everything's going to happen like at once, you
yeah.
know. So
It, I mean, to be fair, it was never about getting subscribers. I just wanted to just getting on Piz's. I used to watch Piz's channel religiously. Then he started doing the live streams, and I wasn't a Patreon then.
mhm.
I became a Patreon, and then when I joined the live streams, I was like, oh, this is so cool. Just
Mhm.
being able to
Yeah.
chat to other fans of the genre.
Yeah.
And that just sort of got me thinking. Now, as much as I love doing the live streams on Pizz's stream,
Yeah.
if it's like 6 or 7 people, it's hard to sort of get. You're sort of struggling to get a word in, especially when you've got I mean, Steak Sauce he's quite chatty and he talks a lot, and Lorne's very talkative, so you're kind of like struggling to get. Sometimes I feel like, well, I'm kind of in the background a bit, and you try and get a point across, then you
Yeah.
out a bit, and so I just kind of wanted to sort of do my own thing, and then bring someone on like yourself, because then obviously you're like me, you're not a YouTuber, you're like me, you just
Uh, yeah,
you're
I'm not, like I mean,
I'm not, I'm a casual fan, but I
yeah.
just want to chat to other casual fans, and just someone like yourself who's I know is like a die-hard horror fan, and just a
Oh
one-on-one,
yeah.
so we can.
Since 13 years old, man.
Yeah, exactly. So just like a one-on-one where you can really sort of bounce off each other and really sort of, without, trying to fight for a point. you know, where there's like 6 or 7 people all jumping about, you know, so it's kind of like I just wanted to do it, you know, thought get a few streams going where like maybe me and you or maybe a couple of other people jump on, but it's not a kind of, you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah, I totally understand, man. And like I said, man, like I said, you're off to a good start so far. Uh, you got to start from somewhere. So my advice to you would be, promote your channel. Um, whoever email you have, email them. If there's a show coming up, promote it or leave something on their comments. And just, as time goes on, other people that you don't know, they'll find you just from YouTube in general, horror fans or whatever, and then, you'll have more people jumping on your show. And, so I would, you just gotta, take your time with it. You can't just expect overnight to have 20,000, 40,000 subscribers, but I mean, if that's what you want, it'll happen, man.
I mean, like I said, I just want to have like a chat with like yourself, just just a chilled, relaxing sort of discussion, and it's never going to be about getting subscribed and stuff. It would be nice to have people jump on in a chat on a live stream, and you can interact with them. But like I say,
yeah.
Of course, one of the downsides of being in the UK is a lot of the live streams you're on, I'm in bed.
The time difference, yeah, it's a time
like
difference, man. Yeah,
12 now. But that's good for me. It's kind of suits me because it means everyone's in bed, so I've not got people coming in and out the living room. But if someone's doing a live stream at like 2 o'clock in the morning, your time, Eastern Coast,
yeah.
back to sleep. You know what I mean? And sometimes there's times as well where obviously some of the guys you go on live streams with.
Mm-hmm.
The notification will come through the going live. It'd be like 2 in the morning, so I've already gone to bed. If I'd known they were going to be on, I might have, set my alarm. But
hey, listen, man, you got responsibilities. Like I said, everybody's got work and stuff, so you don't have to set your live stream to jump on. Do your own thing, man. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing. Just do your own thing. Like I said, you start from the bottom, you work your way up, man. So, and you can't always worry about like what the next person's doing, what this person's doing, how many subscribers does that person have, how many subscribers does this person have. You got to worry about like what you want to do, what Mike wants to do, and promote the channel. And then eventually, people will find you. People who you don't even know, they'll find your channel. People with similar interests, horror movies, this and that. They'll find your channel, and it'll little by little, it will grow. So, I would just give it time, man. And don't get so discouraged.
Yeah. Anyway, on to you. Obviously, I know you through Piz's Patreon stream, and I've seen you on a few other streams, but I don't really know you that well as to, how did you discover the horror genre specifically more, because we're talking about Friday the 13th tonight. Obviously you're a bit younger than me, aren't you? I'm going by your email, you were born in 83.
Yeah. 1983, correct, yes.
37. So you would have discovered Friday the 13th probably, I'm guessing, probably around the time of Jason Goes to Hell, or are you younger than that? I mean, because obviously you wouldn't have been aware of it.
Well, are you asking me when I first got into horror, or Friday the 13th specifically?
Well, we'll go to horror first,
Maybe. Well, I was 13 years old, and I was cutting school. I was hanging out with one of my friends, and Blockbuster was open at the time. So I said, "Hey, man, why don't we go to Blockbuster? Let's rent a horror movie." And because at the time, prior to that, I seen a couple horror movies like on the Sci-Fi Channel, so I already had an interest. I was like, you know what? I think I'm starting to really like horror movies. Like, it was like I started to really get interested in it. So we went to Blockbuster and we walked in the horror section, and it was just so cool, man. I remember I'm like sitting there, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, I'm looking at all the covers. I'm reading the back, of the VHS tapes, because this is the '90s, so we're talking nostalgia, VHS, those mom and pop small horror movie stores, and so I came across Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, and I'm like, I told my buddy, I said, let's rent these movies. This guy looks pretty creepy. And then I read the back, and I'm like, supposedly he kills people in your dreams. So I rented it, and I fell in love with it. I was like, wow, this is great. I was blown away, man. So from then on, I just continued renting more movies. The next one was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which completely traumatized me for like 3 days. I couldn't sleep. I'm 13 years old, and I just got done watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and looking back, it's so cool because I met Gunnar Hansen back in 2007, and I met him at 2013 at a horror convention. So looking back, it's like you grew up watching these people scared the shit out of you, and then eventually I got to meet them, and that was really cool. Meeting them at a horror convention, and just from there, man, just I started renting different horror movies, started getting into the different series, the Halloweens, the Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it just and now I'm 37, and it just went on from there. And there's still so many horror movies that I have not seen, but like I'm very picky when it comes to horror. Like I don't like so much like there's certain horror movies that like don't interest me, that I haven't seen where other people might be like, you know, how did you not see this movie? Well, it just didn't really appeal to me. I didn't, you know, so I wouldn't say I'm so picky when it comes to horror. I just, like I know what I like. I know like, what interests me. And so, but yeah, man, since 13, I've been a big horror movie fan, and I still am, I love horror movies. I think I always will, you know.
So it's quite interesting that you mentioned the fact that it was '96 when you sort of, were introduced to horror. So when you started going to the, Blockbuster in '96, it Scream, Scream came out at this point because you kind of were introduced to horror at like an iconic point of the
Yeah.
'90s because, I don't know if you're aware of it, but for 4 or 5 years before '96, horror movies were just, they were dead. There was nothing going on. And like '96, Scream came out and it just kind of blew the doors off and it became a massive deal again. So you kind of came into it at just the right time, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And the funny thing is, I remember the last movie I seen before Scream in the movie theater, it was um Halloween 6. And and, because it came out in 1995, Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, and that was a great experience. I remember walking in the theater, they had like the ushers, and everybody was wearing a Michael Myers mask, so that was really cool. As a, watching Halloween 6, and then after that, I'm like, well, is there any other movies coming out? And then I read about Scream, and I remember I was like, they started selling the masks early, and everybody was like wearing them in the lunchroom, and then I went to see Scream, and I really liked it. Like I thought it was, I really enjoyed it. How they kind of like combined all the horror movies into one and made it within like its own type of horror movie, and then just from there on, I mean, things just continued. Scream 2, Scream 3, and then other horror movies. Remakes, sequels, prequels, some that should have never been made, but some were made just, for the sake of budget to make money, but I wish and I didn't see Jason Goes to Hell in the movie theater, but I so wish I did. That was 1993. I think, before 1993, I still loved horror, and I obviously I was into horror already, and I was watching horror, but I was watching it more like, I was renting horror movies, going to Blockbuster, going to different video stores, renting horror movies, watching them at home. You
Yeah.
know, I wasn't so big on going to the movie theater, which I wish I was, because I would have definitely would have seen Jason Goes to Hell, definitely would have seen Halloween 5, which came out in 1989. But I was still young at the time, so I didn't quite understand. So,
I,
and
I just, I just, I just think it's crazy that in America, even if you're 9, if you go with an adult, you can go and watch an R-rated film. It's like we can't do that in the UK. You've got to be the age of what the film is classed as.
yeah,
So
yeah, it's the same thing here. You got to be like, if you're underage, you got to be with a parent. But my local movie theater, when I was younger, you know, um, I had two friends who worked there, so they would just let me and my friends sneak in, and we wouldn't get carded or nothing, and so it was exciting. It was cool, man. And looking back now, like, it was really, really nostalgic. Especially like, not only like the whole era and the whole, that moment in time, looking back into like the '90s, but also in horror. You know, you know, Plenty of days cutting school, going to like, rent horror. Like, I remember, back in like '97, '98, man, I cut school so much, and I would call my friend. I'd be like, let's go rent horror movies. We'll smoke a joint all day. We'll drink or something. We'll just watch horror movies all day. And that's what we would do. We would, cut school. We would smoke a joint and then wait for 11 a.m. And that's when all the video stores opened up, and we would go to like every video store, walk around the horror section, and it was just so much fun, man. It was so nostalgic to just walk in, you know, stoned, go to the horror section, walk around and just, because at the time I was already a big fan, so I'm walking around and I'm just like, wow, I'm stoned and I'm looking at all these horror movies I haven't seen yet, and I'm like, I have to see this. I had to see this. I have to see this. Like, I wanted to rent everything at once, but I couldn't. So I was just kind of like, renting two movies at a time. But it was just so cool. It was that nostalgic '90s era. You
what, what, I,
know,
what, what I wanted to bring up actually, when you're talking about the VHS stores back in '96, have you noticed by the time you started going in the late '90s that Blockbuster started to become a dominant force, and like the independent VHS stores had started to decline? Because in the UK, I know, I used to have 2 independent rental stores near me, and
yeah,
by the late '90s, they both closed down, and as a Blockbuster was obviously doing a really good business. They basically be responsible for shutting down, because we kind of have a nostalgic feeling for Blockbuster because it's going back to the '90s, but they're kind of like Costco or Amazon. They did kind of wipe out a lot of like these smaller businesses. You know what I mean?
yeah, 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 yeah. Block. You know what? I think it
I,
did,
I do
but
like
I
Block.
also,
I have good memories of Blockbuster. I do have good memories of Blockbuster, but they did. They kind of were the bullies. They came in and they did see off a lot of the smaller competition.
Mike, I think they did, but at the same time, they didn't. Like, I would say, yes, Blockbuster was very competitive. They had more stores than any other, video store, but I still think, there was a lot of like small mom and pop type of video VHS stores. I had plenty around me that were maybe a quarter of the size of Blockbuster, and you would walk in and there'd be the action section, horror section, the pornography section, and a lot of times, believe it or not, Mike, they had a bigger selection of horror movies than Blockbuster. They
Yeah,
did. all those little stores that weren't nowhere near as big as Blockbuster, nowhere near as big as Blockbuster. Their horror section was not only better, but they had a better selection, more movies, a lot more older movies. Blockbuster had a lot of like the main movies. Like you would walk in the Blockbuster horror section, and it would just be one row, and it would have like maybe Jason 6, 7, 8. It would have a couple Nightmare on Elm Streets, you know, couple Friday the 13th, but and then the rest is it was sci-fi. That's how it was
Yeah.
labeled. It was labeled horror sci-fi. So I think that yeah, I mean overall like Blockbuster, probably made I would assume made more money and they had more chains, but as far as for horror fans like us, true horror fans, I think the smaller stores were better because they had a bigger selection of horror movies. They had more to choose from. So
Yeah.
you have a variety of horror movies, not just a couple from different genres or different franchises. You had horror movies going back to the 50s, 60s, 70s. And so I preferred to go to the smaller stores. One, they were cheaper, they were more fun to go to because you would have other horror fans walking in the section looking around, and sometimes you would talk, you would interact, and but Blockbuster was overall, it was more of like a family type of VHS store, so maybe they made more movie, but I mean that's history, but I don't miss Blockbuster so much as I miss these other video stores, like the smaller ones, with the simple names. You would walk in, man, great horror section. You could, smell the store. You could smell the VHSs. It was just nostalgia, man. It was just pure nostalgia.
The thing I noticed about Blockbuster is you'd walk into Blockbuster on a Friday night, they would have 20 copies of, the latest action film or
Yeah,
romantic comedy. Half the store would be 5 films because it'd just be, one film across covering what could take up 40 films. Whereas you go to like an independent video store, and they would only have one copy of the latest movie or 2 or 3 copies. So if you were like just like a normie who wanted to just get the most popular latest film, you would go to Blockbuster. You would never go to like the local independent VHS store for the latest movie because they'd never be in stock because they'd only have like 3 copies of it. But you'd go to that store to get Halloween 4 or Sleepaway Camp 2.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right, and that's how it was. Like that's exactly how it was. Like, and they would like let you actually, the blockbusters, around me here. I remember when movies were due to come out from the movie theater onto VHS, they would let you like 2 weeks prior to them coming out. They would let you kind of like put a deposit down, so when it comes out, they'll call you, so you can be like the first in line to rent it. And I did that a couple of times, like certain action movies, but I'm not too much into action anymore. But yeah, I mean, the little mom and pop stores were number one, man. Totally. Like their horror section, just the whole vibe and atmosphere. I was giving all my business to them.
Yeah,
And it got to a point where obviously, you got to know the owner, you got to know the people that work there because I was there so much, and it was just you just got to know people. You got to know the regulars who come in, rent horror movies. So it was really cool. Like where Blockbuster was just kind of more like it was Blockbuster. But it didn't have that kind of that horror family vibe,
yeah,
that nostalgic horror, like horror fans kind of like I wouldn't say like horror fans united, but I don't know the right word to use, but like where the smaller stores, the smaller video stores where you would go in, you would go to the horror section, over time, you start to get to know people, and it's like a small family, like a small little horror family, you know what I mean? And I thought that was cool, and and some of them were so old, like it was just creepy going in there. So that was already great, being a horror fan, you walk into this store and it's like really old and creepy looking, where Blockbuster, it was more like a family store, just,
Yeah,
it didn't,
quite soulless atmosphere in Blockbuster.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but I mean, you grew up in Philadelphia, yeah? You're
No,
Philly.
well,
You grew up in
yeah,
Philadelphia.
yeah, Philadelphia, correct,
Yeah,
yes.
so I grew up in Liverpool. So the two big cities. So we both grew up in like fairly big cities.
Yeah,
So we never had an issue with like finding somewhere. Obviously I think Piers grew up in quite a small town. So for him, there wasn't really much choice. So if there might have been a Blockbuster, or there might be the likes of us. We have plenty of choice. I mean, when I growing up, it's like you know where I live, it's like roughly like a million people population. So there's no shortage of like Blockbuster. When I growing up, Blockbuster, VHS rental stores, independents, So, but I imagine it was quite tough, for people growing in more rural areas to find like Blockbusters taking over the mom and pop is shut down and they've only got one option. It's not, obviously we never faced that because growing up in a big city, but I think Piz has said himself that he grew up in a small town and he'd have to travel to 30-mile drive to find another VHS store. It's like obviously we never faced those problems, but I can only imagine especially in the States where it's so spread out that there's people living in small towns where they may not have even had a VHS store. It's like,
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people out there like that, but me personally, I never had that problem. Um, growing up in a big city like Philadelphia, we had plenty of small like video stores, and sometimes, honestly, Mike, I would go out of the city, because I wanted to check out all the video stores in Philadelphia, outside of Philadelphia. So a lot of times I would drive like an hour away to some farm country in Pennsylvania and check out their video store, and it was still cool.
yeah,
It still had like that creepy vibe, but they had a little bit more like they would have like a popcorn machine and a soda machine, and the horror section was still good, but I never really rented anything from there, because I'm like, I'm not going to drive. I don't feel like driving an hour to bring it back, you know what I mean? But I wanted to check it out just for the nostalgic sake, just to check it out, see what their horror section is like. But um but mostly I just stayed local. Yeah,
yeah.
in my city, as far as like renting horror movies, and and a lot of them were on TV too, during that time, on the Sci-Fi Channel. But the thing with that was they never showed anything. So even though they were on the Sci-Fi Channel, they cut so many scenes out where it's like, oh, that sucks, and then, for example, like I remember I seen one horror movie. I forget the name of it. I don't remember what it was, but I really liked it. But I watched it on the Sci-Fi Channel, and since it was public television, they couldn't, they had to edit it out a lot of things. So as soon as I got done watching it, I went to go get the R-rated version, or I think it was the uncut rated version from the video store, and I'm like, okay, this is more like it, because if I'm watching a horror movie, I want to see the good stuff. I don't want the good stuff cut out. So
So getting on to Friday the 13th, um, what was your introduction to the franchise? So what was the first film? Because with like myself, the first movie I saw at the franchise was Part Six, partly due to the fact that it came out in
Part
'86.
six.
So
Yeah.
I was like, so I first became introduced to, like, the franchise in about '88. So
Right.
at this
Yeah.
point, that was probably one of the newest films. So I saw six first, and I think then I went back. So because I think that most people, they didn't see the first film first; they saw a sequel first and then went back. So what was the first Friday the 13th film that you actually saw?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned it. A lot of my friends, the first Friday they seen was Part Six, and that's how I got introduced to the Friday 13th. I remember always seeing like the videos when I would go into the video store, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna rent that movie next time, or I'm gonna start from Part One, work my way up, and then they're like, oh yeah, I seen Part Six. It was on the Sci-Fi Channel or it was on USA. It was pretty good. But it wasn't the first movie, the Friday I seen. The first Friday I seen was Part Two, and I absolutely loved it. I rented it on VHS and I went with my friend at the time. I was like 14, 15 years old, and his parents, they had like a shore house, or I should say lake house. It was like a house by the lake, and every weekend they would go there like for the weekend. So they invited me over there and went there, and I took a bunch of horror movies, but one of them was Friday the 13th Part 2, and that was like the movie we watched over and over all weekend. It was just, I love Friday 13th Part 2. That was the first, Friday 13th I got introduced to, and I just really loved it. And then I seen the original, which I mean, I love the original, and then from there, I seen Part 3 and then Final Chapter, which I love Final Chapter. I think that's the most brutal, the most, uh, goriest. I mean, I was out. Is it the most goriest? I mean, I don't know, but I would say it's the most like brutal one, where Jason is like really vicious. He's not playing games. There's no, he's really, it's the most brutal Jason. I think so. And then just from then on, I remember even when I watched Friday 13th Part 5, I was fooled, man. I thought it was actually Jason. When I watched the new beginning, I had no idea until the end when they threw him off, and then, the mask came off and it ended up being Roy. And I'm like, whoa, and I was so young, I didn't understand. I'm like, wait a minute, that wasn't Jason. I said, or was it Jason? And he was just wearing like two different faces. Like I was so confused. And then like a couple months later, like I realized, I'm like, oh, it was somebody dressed up as Jason, impersonating him, but I thought that was really cool. Like I still remember, my reaction, watching it, I'm like, whoa, like, because I actually like, I was expecting to see Jason, his face, and everything. And then, it was, the whole thing was a cover up. And I was like, wow, like that really shocked me, at the end. I remember like I jumped out my seat. I was like, man, like, like, and then from there, just Part 6, which I love, with, I was already an Alice Cooper fan. So, having, the soundtrack was great, and then Part 7 and 8, and then then there was like a break, and then so on so forth, but I love the Friday the 13th series. I've always been a fan. The remake was okay. I wasn't a big fan of the remake, but there was elements I enjoyed. I think there's going to be another one coming out in a year or two. I hope it's good. I hope they do it right. I hope that it's really terrifying. I hope it's not so Hollywood and so cheesy. So I mean, that's all we can really do is just hope that they get it right. You know.
Well, let's take it back a step. Let's go back to Part 1, 1980. So you said you saw Part 1 after Part 2.
Part 2, correct? Yeah.
So you, but did you know that Mrs. Voorhees was the killer? Because it
No,
doesn't. Yeah. So
no, no. I had absolutely no idea, Mike, and that was another, you know, uh, that was like another um, mind trick. I don't want to curse on your channel, and I was like,
It's like
you
fuck
know,
out.
that was another like mind fuck, man, because I was like, the whole time I thought it was either Jason I mean, because I was still young, so I thought it had to be Jason, or maybe it was like Crazy Ralph. At first, in the beginning, I thought, okay, maybe Jason comes later. Like I had like this weird, like I was already like analyzing the movie within the first 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, this guy could possibly be the killer, but wait a minute, but what about Jason? Maybe Jason doesn't come in till later. Maybe it's so like but then you know when it's revealed at the end that it was his mother, I was completely blown away. I had no idea. Like I thought it was literally Jason, but they're not going to show him to the end, and then and then in part two, obviously they show more of him and so on. So I thought, since this was the first one, maybe they want to save him for the end, and then kind of like a big reveal. And then when I found out it was his mother, um, I remember it was a really creepy and eerie feeling, because I'm sitting there watching the movie, and then and I'm looking at and I'm like, there's something not right with this lady. And then she starts talking more and more, and I'm listening, and she's having those flashbacks, and then I'm like, is that his mother? And then it, like, after like a couple more sentences that she said, I realized right there, I'm like, wow, she's the killer. And I'm like, wow. Like I was completely blown away, man. I had no fucking idea that she was the killer.
I mean,
I was
she's not shown in the movie at all until the very end. So
no, and the kills are great in part one. I loved it, but it wasn't shown, so you had absolutely no idea. Nobody could have imagined. Like I wish I seen it in the movie theater, but I mean, I wasn't born then yet. But I can imagine the people in the movie theater at the time, they were probably just as shocked. Nobody had any idea. I would imagine, that even people in the movie theater probably had no idea that she was the killer until she actually, you know, hits that wooden frame and says they should have been paying attention, and then, right then you kind of knew, like, okay, something's not right here. Like this is taking a turn, and then you're like, wow, she's the fucking killer. Oh my god, and then it just gets more creepier and creepier, and then it becomes horrifying from there. Like how she chases Alice and just goes berserk, and then obviously the story is more explained, and you know we go to part two, and so, but yeah, part one completely blew me away, man.
I mean, there are a couple of scenes in the film where, if you look closely, it's clearly a man's hands, gripping a weapon, and people have pointed out that it's obviously a man who's holding it, and that's probably threw people a loop, thinking, oh, it's definitely Jason, but obviously at the end, it's Mrs. Voorhees. But has it ever been sort of clarified at the end of the first movie whether she was dreaming or whether it was real? Because I don't think I've ever.
That's a good question. I never
I don't
um
think I found it. Or
I never read anything, or never came across any theories or suggestions or any kind of uh, verification that Alice was actually dreaming. That part one was just all a dream. I never and that's a really good question, Mike. That's actually a really good you know point of view to look at things. Like it's an interesting theory, but um, nothing to this day would make me believe that she was dreaming. It's an interesting like concept, but I don't think that I don't think that she was. No, I think that uh the events played out how they played out, man. She killed Pamela. But rest in peace to Betsy Palmer. She was so sweet. Really, I met her at a horror convention a couple of times. Really nice lady. And after she killed her, she probably, just got in the boat and just wanted to kind of like, she was probably in so much shock of everything that happened that went on that she probably just like got in the boat and went out into the river and then was waiting for help and then she fell asleep and then you know then had the nightmares. Maybe it was some kind of like psychological thing, kind of like foreseeing the future, and then in the morning, the police find her and then they bring her back to the hospital and then she's probably still kind of like in and out of shock. She falls asleep. She goes to the hospital. They give her something to kind of make her fall asleep. She wakes up and then she's having that dream and Jason coming out of the water, and then the police officer says, "Man, we didn't find any boy," and so then she's in her mind, she's like, he's still out there, and then 5 years later, uh, part two, and then Jason comes, looking for her, which it's interesting because I always wondered like, how did he know where she lived? How did she live close to the lake? Did he like, it was really interesting.
We'll get on to part two now, but before we go into part two, I just want to ask you, obviously, your favourite kill from the first film. Because I mean,
Oh wow.
I know what my favourite is. I think most people's favourite is, but
Favorite kill. Oh man, that's favorite kill. Wow.
I'm just gonna say Kevin Bacon now.
Yeah. You know what? I would say, yeah, Kevin Bacon. Yeah. I was thinking I totally like, yeah, that was like in the back of my mind. I was just, I was thinking from like the beginning, and I was kind of like going through the movie like in phases. But yeah, definitely Kevin Bacon. Absolutely,
I mean, this is
absolutely.
all.
And I think that's a kill that nobody's seen coming. He's sitting there. Like imagine being in the movie theater or just even like watching it at home. He's laying there, and he gets done smoking a joint, having a beer, and the rain's coming down, and the atmosphere. It's like thundering outside, and it's all quiet. He lights it up, and then the hand just comes out, and then next thing you know, like the pitchfork or knife comes out of the bow and arrow comes out of his neck. Oh, people in the movie theater must have been like, like oh my god, definitely, yeah. I would say that's my favorite kill from the first one. Absolutely.
So anyway, moving on to part two with the 10-minute introduction, which is basically Friday the 13th part one. So it's quite a short film, part two. If you take out the introduction, I think it's something like a 75-minute film, but it certainly packs a lot into those 75 minutes. It's obviously I think
it does. Yeah.
It in terms of like it manages to establish the best female final girl, arguably of all time, in a short space of time, really, because she doesn't really have that much time to establish herself. But people have different opinions on the best Friday film or the best Jason, but most people are pretty much the consensus is that Ginny is the best. Amy Steele is the best final girl. Most people would. Nobody really disputes that. Really, it's kind of just taken as gospel. Maybe you think.
I like Amy Steele. I like Amy Steele. I love Friday too. Do I think she was the best final girl in all the Friday movies? That's debatable. That's just my opinion. But she was definitely great in part two. And um, you know, but do I think she was the best final girl? I don't know. It's a good question, Mike. It's really debatable. I mean, because there was a couple girls who I thought were, uh, pretty good kind of like final Friday 13th girls, to make it at the end to survive the carnage from Jason. So, oh man, that's a tough question.
Maybe it could just be that years of people saying the same thing over and over again. Maybe people just get built into the brain that is just the default sort of answer for the best. I mean, I personally think she's probably just about. I think that all other good final girls. I think she's probably the one who maybe uses her brain the most. Maybe that's why the way she tricks Jason with the
Yeah.
head. Maybe that's why it elevates it. Because some of the final girls they do tend to just run about screaming, and then through blind luck, they manage to kill him. Sort of kill him. To the next film. So you know, yeah, it's one of them. Lost Cunningham's in the chat, so you know, what's his opinion? Who does he think the best final girl is? But anyway, carrying on. Yeah,
I mean, it's really a debatable subject, Mike. And again, I'm a big fan of Amy Steele. I've met her at horror conventions. She was an April Fool's Day. I just don't. I don't. I really love Friday the 13th Part Two. I just don't know if I would label her as the best final girl. I don't know, because there were just so many good ones. I mean, I don't know. You know, but you're right. She did have the smarts to kind of, she was very smart as far as like, her whole approach to, killing Jason and getting away from him. But I don't know. I mean, it's a tough question to answer, Mike. Like I can't really give like a, I wish I could say I think she's the best, but I don't know. There's like one or two other girls who are kind of like on the list. So I don't know. Like I don't want to give her the nod. I think a lot of people do think that she's the best final girl in all the Friday 13th movies. And I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, that's just my opinion. I don't know. I mean, it's a tough question.
Let's move on to Jason, because obviously part two, we do get Jason, we get Sackhead Jason. Now, it's probably the most unique slasher franchise where you've got three different killers in the one. Well, two different killers. Well, no,
Yeah.
four. You've got three different. You've got two different masks. It goes all over the place, and that's what I love about this franchise. Is you've got Mrs. Voorhees in part one, then you get Sackhead Jason, then we'll stick to part two for now. Obviously, he moves to Hockey Jason. But what were your thoughts on Sackhead? Are you a fan of the Sack, or would you more the hockey mask guy?
No, absolutely. I'm a fan, and rest in peace to what was his name? The Jason from part two, the actor Steve Dash. Yeah, I've met Steve plenty of times at a horror convention, and he was always he was very fan friendly. I am a fan of Sackhead Jason. I think it had a very part two in general, not just Sackhead Jason, but part two in general had a very, very creepy, terrifying vibe to it. Very terrifying tone. And there was many moments in part two where you would get Sackhead Jason just like appear out of nowhere. For example, when the sheriff is driving down the road and Jason crosses it, that was a great shot. That was a great shot, very terrifying. And then he gets out, he gets out. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
Like a split second, isn't it? It's like
half a second maybe.
That's the great thing about the shot is it's just he's sort of like that.
Yeah, but it's done so well that where if you're in the movie theater Or if you've seen the movie for the first time, and even if you're home, you're like, whoa, and then the cop stops his car and gets out, and you're like, no, don't get out. You're thinking in your head, don't get out, don't chase him. And already it becomes like sheer terror. It becomes like sheer horrifying. Because he's chasing him, and you're thinking, don't chase him. Or don't stop the car, don't get out of the car, just keep driving. But the sheriff doesn't know what's going on, and then he finds, and then what's more terrifying is what awaits, what the sheriff comes upon, Jason's little cabinet, where he walks in and he sees everything that's going on there, and he's just like completely shocked. And then you get a little bit of a kind of like a Halloween 2 kill there, obviously, where Michael takes the hammer to the back of the head of the security guard. Same thing happens in Friday the 13th Part 2. I don't know if they kind of copied off that, but that's a whole nother discussion. And then as soon as you see that hammer, that's it, man. It's over. And so, but I was a big fan of Sackhead Jason, because from the ending of Part 1, and you see his face as a child, so you're wondering, okay, why is he covering up his face? Are we going to see his face? And we do at the end, and then you're like, holy shit, when he comes breaking through that window, I'm like, oh man, the first time I seen Part 2, I was like, oh my God, like I jumped out of my chair, man, and then you go to Part 3, and I guess that's when he gets his hockey mask, and then you kind of figure it all out. He doesn't want his face seen, or that's just his style, but yeah, Sackhead Jason was absolutely terrifying. Absolutely.
Of course, end of Part 2, we're left with another of his did he or didn't he with Paul. Did he die or didn't he die? It's similar to Part 1. You're not quite sure.
Yeah.
Is it imaginative? Is she imagined it, or is it real? But and of course, Part 2 is where I can't remember the guy's name. He goes to the bar and just gets drunk.
Was it the tall guy, tall skinny guy?
Yeah.
Stu.
Yeah, maybe. He goes to the bar, gets pissed, and misses the whole carnage. And it's like
that's the actor's name. His name. What's his name in the movie? I forget his name in Part 2, but the actor Stu Charno. Yeah. They all do. I love that scene, because that's what I would do. If I was a camp counselor, and we got obviously we got a killer running around, but nobody knows. They give us one night out on the town. I'm there, man. You don't have to tell me twice. I'm gathering everybody up. Let's go. Go get drunk, and so yeah. Part 2 is it's a fun, it's a fun Friday 13th film. Part 2, it really is, but it's also very terrifying. Very terrifying.
It also features, in my opinion, the best looking Friday girl in Teddy. She's
in who?
Teddy.
Friday 2, Teddy.
Teddy in the denim shorts.
Oh yeah.
She's like definitely the best looking.
Yeah, man. I think. I mean, that's like a whole nother topic, man. If I sat here and thought of every who's like the hottest girl from each Friday the 13th movie, I mean, I think I had the list in my head, but I mean, it's just but she was definitely man. I mean, I don't think she looks like that now. Some of them still look good. It depends how you take care of yourself. But yeah, that was she was something, man. Whew, them shorts. Oh man. That's something nice to look at when you're drunk. Believe me, man.
So moving on to Part 3, 3D. Did you watch this after Part 1, or was it?
No, it was after 2. It was after 2. I rented Part 3, but I didn't see it in 3D. I did not see Part 3 in 3D until Blu-rays came out, and then once I bought the Blu-ray, the glasses were in it, and that's when I actually watched it, on my big screen TV, and it was pretty cool. It was like, but I wish I had the theater experience, but I was still young at the time, so I rented it and I watched it and I liked it. I thought it had a very different kind of like vibe and tone and feel compared to part two and one. But I think it was, it had like this darkness to it that the other films kind of didn't. I'm not sure how quite to explain it, but I did like part three. I thought, I thought it was terrifying. I did. I liked it. The old man lying in the road, and then they're in the van, and I think I even watched it stoned, and then seeing that scene, I'm like, whoa, with the old man, he's holding the eyeball, he's like, he told me to warn me. I was like, yeah, like here we go, and then it was good. Yeah, part three was fun. A lot of the kills were some brutal kills in part three. The women were hot. The story was good. I thought. Richard Broker. Was a great Jason. I thought. Yeah, yeah.
I think for me personally, he's the best Jason. I think he's that perfect combination of sort of. He's got a little bit of the Kane Hodder in him, but he's also got that more human element.
Yeah, yeah.
And you look like a big guy as well.
Well, he was Richard, and I've met Richard before at a horror convention. Richard, he passed away sadly, but yeah, he was 6'3", Richard.
Yeah.
I'm 5'11", so when I met him, he was like, like this much taller than me, and but he was thin, the times that I seen him, but back then, you could tell he was muscular, and he had that like perfect combination of like monster but human, as to where Kane Hodder was a good Jason. I'm not taking anything away from Kane Hodder. Kane Hodder was just like a Hulk, 6'5", and which is fine because we had bigger Jasons. If you go down the list, Derek Mears is 6'9", 6'10" with shoes, so but yeah, part three was really good. Really good actors. The characters I liked. I think that they could have left a lot of the comedy out. Certain, you know, because some of the comedy just sometimes it just ruins a horror movie. I thought they could have left some of the comedy out, but I mean the kills are brutal, man. My favorite kill from part three, I would say, would probably be that where the guy gets chopped in half. When he's doing where he's doing the handstands, and then, oh my god, man, I felt that. So yeah, that was it was pretty brutal.
My only issue with part three is they put scenes in for the 3D effect which were totally out of place in the film, where they're doing the yo-yos into the camera.
Yeah, yeah. That was cool. Yeah, and there was a couple shots like that. Even when I forget what's that guy's name, the one who was eating the donuts, eating and drinking the orange juice. What was his name in the movie? I forget. Earl or something. He was going to like the bathroom and like bringing whiskey out and drinking it. Even like parts where she's doing the laundry or he's doing the laundry, and you could tell like it's coming at you. But if you're not watching it in 3D, you don't get the full effect.
But they do have a good kill in the 3D where Jason, I think she's stood by the lake. Jason points the he's got like some sort of like it's like
spear, the spear. Yeah.
I mean, they made good use of it for the kills, but if you're going to use 3D, use it for kills. Don't use it for people playing the yo-yo. What's the point?
Yeah, and I think like that was their intention, just to kind of like the whole movie in general was 3D from the opening title, because you could tell the opening title coming at you was in 3D. I could tell even before I watched it in 3D glasses. And I think that's how they wanted to do it. They wanted to just the whole movie was in 3D. And especially maybe they could have paid more emphasis to the kills. But I think that's something they just wanted it done just to kind of like maybe make it more fun, maybe make it more terrifying. And in a sense, it can be more terrifying if you think about it. I mean, watching it in 3D and kind of like, you're like, whoa, it kind of like puts you in the movie. It puts you, in that real life situation where it's like, it's pretty horrifying.
Well, is it part three or part four where it's that really brutal kill where he gets like a saw and he starts sawing his neck? It's one of those brutal kills in the franchise, and he grabs him and he gets the saw and he's just like that, like
Oh yeah,
three, not three or four, I can't remember.
that's four. That's four. That was absolutely. Timmy made a comment. What did he say? He said, "I do the laundry and drank whiskey." That's how it's done. That's how it's done, Timmy. You know what, Timmy's probably telling the truth too. I believe Timmy. He does do the laundry drunk. Um, uh, yeah, Mike. That was a really brutal kill. That was part four, final chapter, and that's when I knew that.
We'll move on to part four now because it's arguably, in my opinion, it's almost like the perfect slasher film.
Oh yeah,
It's got
part
everything.
four is clearly everybody's favorite. Well, I wouldn't say but it's like everybody's. You talk to a lot of different horror fans, and they'll say, "Well, I like the original, and then I like part four."
Or
Part four is
part six as well.
or part
Part
six.
six is
Yes, yes. But part four is my second favorite. My first favorite, is the original, and then part four. Part four, I think, absolutely was the most brutal one. Like you just said, where he takes the guy head, Axel, the guy working at the hospital, and when he goes down, after the paramedics and everybody, they get Jason in the body bag, they bring him to the hospital. Hospital puts him in the freezer, and then Axel's there, and he's dating the nurse, and then they go down. He asks her to meet him downstairs in the hot tub. Again, Halloween 2 vibes. You know, um, so and then when that kill happened, man, I was like, wow. I was like this movie's off to a brutal start. Like this Jason is brutal. Like he's really he's not just killing people, he's viciously killing people. He's psychotically killing people. Like he's angry, and it was really terrifying, and the first time I seen it, I was still young. It was still like the 80s when I seen it. So I was really really like terrified, man. I was like wow, this is, and then when he kills the other girl, he picks her up, and then he puts the knife in her chest, and then he's slicing down and she's screaming. I'm like, wow. I'm like these are some vicious kills. This is an angry Jason. He's out for blood, and then the rest of the kills as the movie goes on, and my goodness, part four was absolutely vicious. I love part four. I think it was the meanest Jason out of all the Jasons. I think it was part four, and I think it had probably the best kills. I mean, well, arguably probably some of the best kills, or at least the kills were done in a very vicious way. Like, not just okay, Jason cuts somebody's head off, or stab someone, or I mean, he was grabbing people by the head and crushing their head, and just doing all these. He was like a very angry Jason, and you could tell by his kills, by his moans and his groans. I love part four, man. Not to mention the women in part four.
Tom Savini. Tom Savini do the special effects for part
Yeah,
four.
He was behind the special effects. Tom Savini, yeah, and he did an excellent job. Excellent job.
I think was it part two where he did the burn, and he was meant to do part two, but he did the burning instead. So part two wasn't Tom Savini. I always forget which one it was. I'm sure it was part two where he was meant to do the effects, but he did the burning, came out the same year, and he ended up doing the burning instead. So part two went to somebody else. And I think, Lots Cunningham might know. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I'm
can't remember.
trying to think too. I can't off the top of my
Definitely,
head. I don't.
he did the burning was 81, and he definitely did the burning. So I can't see how he would have managed to fit in doing Friday Part
I
Two.
would have to. I would have to look that up because I'm not quite sure. I always thought I knew he did the burning, but I don't know if he did some parts of part two or if it was somebody else. That's something off the top of my head. I don't know. I would have to look that up. But going back to part four. Oh man, he was incredible in part four. I mean, part four was just absolutely brutal. And just you kind of like felt bad for some of these people. Not like felt bad, but it was just like really like traumatized and vicious. To me, it was when I seen it. I mean, it was part four. I probably seen in either 89 or 90. Maybe 91. I mean, I was born in 83, so I was still young, and I remember I seen part four, and I'm like, wow, that's vicious. When Teddy's smoking a joint, and he's watching the naked girl on the projector, and then he goes up. The projector shuts off, and he's going up, and I'm like, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh man. And then, he gets stabbed in the back of the head and then he just like, he's going down and the knife is going down, cutting the projector. That's a pretty brutal scene, man. I mean, Jason was completely out for blood in part four and part four was great.
Did,
There's
did you
not,
like did you like Corey Feldman being in
yeah,
the film?
yeah. In part four, I think he did a good job. I really think he did. I think that Corey Feldman, when he was introduced in part four, what what was cool about it is that he knew, I think he knew about Jason, and that wasn't proven until later on in the movie when when you see like the clippings, when he's cutting his hair. But I think in the beginning, I think he knew about Jason. He knew the history of that camp right next to where he lived. Because when his mother told him that, they're going to have new camp counselors, you could see the look in his face. He looked very, like distressed, like worried. He asked, how many? And right then you kind of knew like he knew something. He knew the history of the camp. He knew of the murders that took place, in the previous years. And so that was like kind of like a shock to him and also worrisome, so you know, yeah.
The one, I mean, Part Four is my favourite Friday film. I go sort of flip flop between Part Four and Part Six. Part Four, one thing about having a kid in it is you kind of know before the film starts who, say, final girl, the final, he's not going to die. So it kind of takes away that sort of element of like, well, who's going to be the final boy or final girl? Because if you've got a kid and he's a main character, obviously that he's going to survive. So it kind of takes away that, well, who's going to survive, and anyone connected to him as well, like his family, they're probably going to be safe as well. So I mean, I love the film, but you going into it, that obviously Corey Feldman is going to be facing up to Jason at the end, and you haven't got that sort of element of which one is going to be killed off, because clearly he's going to survive, and the characters who live across the on the other side of the lake,
Yeah.
clearly they're not going to be the final girl or the final boy. So they're kind of like cannon fodder for Jason. But I mean, it doesn't take any. I mean, I think it's almost like the perfect slasher film. Obviously, not as perfect as like Halloween, but it's in terms of camp slashers. I mean, it's just pretty much you can't be beaten. I don't think.
No, and I agree, Mike. And you know, part four, I love part four. It's next behind part one, it's my favorite. And I think, going back to what you said, you know, kind of him being like the hero at the end. Nobody's seen that coming. I didn't see that coming, until then when it actually happened, and I mean, I had no idea how it was going to end, and I was so young when I seen it first that I thought that this might be the last Friday the 13th movie, and then because of the title, the final chapter. So to me, it was kind of also exciting to see how they were gonna like finally kill Jason, and then I think yeah, the ending was really good. It was really really good. I thought the machete to the head, the how he kind of like fooled Jason for a second there, cut his hair like with the picture to make him appear as a young Jason, to kind of distract Jason so much, but and even at the end you could tell the brutality of Jason, breaking through the door. I mean, this guy just breaks through the door, man. I mean, this was a like a horrific, like mean Jason, and I loved it. Part four is a staple in any Friday the 13th fan's heart, and I think it's always going to be.
Yeah, I kind of wonder like what the thinking was at the studio when they called it the final chapter, because if the franchise is still doing good money, and we know the Paramount were embarrassed by Friday the 13th, they didn't even like the franchise. It made money for them, so they carried on making it. But call a movie the final chapter. I mean, I wonder like how much they did want to just end it, and
Yeah.
well, obviously it did enough. It did enough money for them to come back. I mean, it came back. It was the next year. It wasn't like a 5, 10 year gap. They came back the
Yeah.
following year with the next movie. So it just seemed like a bit of a silly idea to call a movie the final chapter. They must have known,
But Mike, I think that it kind of, I don't know if, and to be honest with you, as much as I like part six and the rest of the Jasons, if Friday the 13th part four, if that was the only one, I would have been fine with that. If they stopped there, I would have been fine with that. You know, you know, but I think that it was so good and it made so much money, or it made at least a decent amount of money, that the producers and director and Hollywood said, let's keep it going, because you could put out something, like look at the horror movies nowadays. You put out something stupid, if it makes money, they'll make a sequel. But I think that's what it was. I think maybe they wanted to end it there, but they seen that okay, it made money. We have a fan base. People are loving it. Let's keep it going. But I would have been fine if Friday 4 was the last one. And I know you like six. I like six. But I mean, Friday 4 is just great. And if they ended it there, I would have been fine.
well, I mean, like it's one of those you could almost break the franchise down into like sort of almost like four parts. You've got 1 to 4, which is obviously Human Jason. You've got part 5, which is just its own thing. You've got Zombie Jason 6 to 8.
Zombie Jason. Yeah.
9 and 10 are just in a completely different unit. They're basically in it. I don't even regard them as. For me, the franchise ended after part 8. I'll watch Jason Goes to Hell and I'll watch Jason X, but I don't regard them as. Well, they're not. They're not actually Friday the 13th films. They're Jason films. So, technically, they're not actually Friday the 13th films. Friday the 13th is the ultimate 80s franchise. Part 1 came out in 1980. Part 8 came out in 1989. Anything after that is not technically a Friday the 13th film, apart from obviously the remake. So, I mean, I'll watch Jason X and I'll watch, Jason Goes to Hell, but to me, they're not, unless you've got that Paramount logo at the beginning, You know, when you put a Friday film on, you've got the mountains with the Paramount sign.
Yep.
That to me is a Friday film, not New Line Cinema. I think it was New Line, wasn't it? Who took over? Yeah.
No, I agree, Mike. You know what? Listen, to me, I like part 6, and I know a lot of people hated part 7. Horror fans all over the world, I know a lot of people. Part 7's not really liked. I like part 7. I thought, I liked it. Manhattan was, it was fun, but to me, I think honestly, like, and I liked 6, but it was just something. It just wasn't the same. I mean, I liked 6. Don't get me wrong. It just wasn't the same. To me, I think it kind of ended after part 4, and they just kind of dragged it on. But that doesn't mean they made bad films, because honestly, I like part 5, and a lot of people will tell you they hate part 5. I like part 5. Part 6 I liked. Part 7 I liked. I like Jason Takes Manhattan. Jason Goes to Hell. I didn't really like. I thought that's just like where they're kind of like just dragging something along where like enough's enough. And then Jason in Space, completely stupid. I mean, come on, let's be serious. We go from Friday the 13th Part 4 to so many years down the road, Jason in Space. Come on, like
every horror franchise eventually ends up in space.
yeah, it was stupid. It was horrible. I think it was just a cash grab. It was just, sometimes I don't even know what these studios are thinking. Like they need to, like, I just think they're just. It's just, I was completely disgusted by it. Completely disgusted by it. It was just, it was stupid. It should have never happened. It was nonsense. And then the remake, it was okay. There was, stuff I liked about it, but it didn't have that same, like feel, that vibe, that like, for example, I mean, to bring another franchise into this real quick, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003. I loved it. I thought they did it so perfectly to have that 70s feel, that 70s atmosphere. Of course, it wasn't, obviously not like the original, but I think they did their best to make it as close as you can get, and it was a terrifying film. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003, but but back to the Jasons, like, it just, and 6 I like. It was too. Yeah, I didn't like his outfit. I thought the outfit was kind of just, kind of weird. I don't know, but
we'll come back to that in a minute. We'll come back to that, and we'll go back to New Beginning. Obviously, like me, no idea. Thought Jason was Jason, and
yeah, yeah.
So, what were your thoughts on Part 5? Did you, going into it, did you sort of sense that this was kind of like a different type of Friday, because it was very sort of quite sort of grungy? It was quite almost like something like Quentin Tarantino would make if he was going to do a slasher film, and really nasty and dirty.
You know what, man? Mike, honestly, I stand by my comment. I liked Part 5. I really did. I know a lot of people hate it, and that's their opinion. That's fine, But I like Part 5. I really do. I like the kills. I thought it had a pretty, like, brutal, mean type of element to it. I like the cinematography, the soundtrack. I really liked it. I thought it was fun. It was a fun film, and obviously the surprise at the end where we find out that it's Roy, But I kind of knew something was up, after when Roy shows up, as a paramedic and his partner to, pick up the pieces um, from what was that guy's name who got hacked? The kid, I
Oh,
forget.
I
I
forget.
forget his name. Joey. When they go to the crime scene and Joey's all hacked to pieces, and then they arrest a guy. When I first seen it, I remember I when Roy made that face when he covered up Joey, um, I knew something wasn't right. I didn't know what it was. Um, I just knew from that moment on, I knew something wasn't right, and I can't quite put my finger on it. Because the whole time I'm still thinking it's Jason. It's and why aren't they showing Jason? Why are the kills kind of like behind the camera kills or POV type of kills? Um, but I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but I knew something was off, and then looking at Roy's, you know, body and like the way he was walking and his maneuvers and how he was moving and his mannerisms. Um, I kind of thought to myself that, you know, I wouldn't I didn't think it was him, but I just thought something was off, and I couldn't picture it was just weird. Like I just like I didn't know what it was, and then as things went on, as the movie went on, the story developed, and you know I kind of like started putting. I was kind of like you know thinking things in my head, trying to figure things out, but I still wasn't completely sure. I still wasn't. I thought, okay. Then when they had the whole barn fight, I said, okay, this is Jason, and but I was still thinking about Roy. I'm like, there's something's not connected here. And then when he gets thrown off on the spikes, and then I'm like, whoa. I'm like, it was Roy, and I was like, wait a minute. So what is this? Are they doing like a Halloween? And again, I keep going back to Halloween 3, like so. No, well, no, Halloween 3 would be a bad analogy, but I'm like, okay, so Jason's not in this, but like so, like and then they explain the story, how and it was just kind of like I was just kind of shocked, man. Like I was just really like just kind of sitting there thinking to myself, you know, wow, like because I never seen that coming. I didn't think that that would be the case, So I was completely shocked, and then and I was wondering, is he really dead? Like, and then the ending, with Tommy and everything, and then then you move on to part 6, and then the story continues. But yeah, I mean, part 5 was a mind fuck, man. It definitely was.
The way they used, the way the camera focuses on Roy's face in part 5 after he's discovered his son's body. If that was done nowadays, that would just be a decoy. They actually went with it at him as the killer, and it was almost like it's so obvious that you think, well, it's too obvious that it is him. It was kind of like a clever way of, you know, tricking the audience because when it focuses on him and his eyes, you know, he looks insane, and you think, well, it's obviously not him. If this is, if they're trying to trick the audience thinking he's the killer, well, obviously it's not him because he just looks psychotic.
Yeah.
So it really is Jason, and it's not Jason. He is actually. So it's kind of like a double bluff. They did kind of do a good job of tricking the audience because
They did. Yeah, man, they definitely did, Mike. And and I think that with the horror movies you have nowadays, I think that it would be more kind of like people would kind of suspect something, but then again, you really never know. Like I remember, there's plenty of horror movies I've seen where like even like '80s horror movies that I've seen like within the last year that I've never seen before, where I was like, okay, that guy's the killer. Nah, you know what? It's either that guy or that guy or that guy, and I have 4 killers picked out, and it was neither of them. and I was like completely blown away. But I think that they did a really good job, like you said, in part five, of just like, I mean, again, like, I'm sure people who seen it in the movie theater would probably were like, wow, like I did not see that coming. Like, oh my God, because that was my reaction, and I didn't see it in the movie theater, but that was my reaction, when I seen it the first time, when he falls down and then they're like, oh my God, it's not Jason, or I forget what exactly was said. And it was revealed that it was Roy. I was like, holy shit. I'm like, holy shit. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, like, wow. Like I was, I was in complete shock, man. So they did a very good job with part five as far as like keeping the audience going and not like, stringing them along into the final finale. And then, I thought it was done nicely. Yeah.
I like Tommy Jarvis as well. I liked the guy who played Tommy Jarvis. I like Tom Matthews, obviously, because I like six is probably my favourite Tommy Jarvis character. But I mean, I can't remember his name. The guy who played Tommy Jarvis in five, he's like fucking ripped. He's a proper like
In part five, yeah, yeah.
Sort of guy. Tom Matthews in part six is quite, not very strong looking guy, but the guy in
Yeah.
part five is fucking beast. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was trying taking on Jason and giving it a good go, but obviously for whatever reason they decided to go with Tom Matthews for part six. Maybe because I think he'd done Return of the Living Dead the previous.
Yeah, and he was good at that,
Well,
Tom
yeah.
Matthews.
I mean, I love Tom Matthews, but I do like the guy in part five. I thought he was kind of like he was like an intense sort of, but part six went more of a sort of more of a light-hearted route, and it might not have.
Yeah, more so like lighthearted, more so kind of like not as serious as part five, or just especially the other ones. It went more of like a, kind of like a,
I think Lawrence
like a rock and roll type, more like now we're getting to like more like the 80s type, the more like actiony, not so much like, scary, dark, terrifying, more like just, kind of like horror action, like a little bit of comedy, but I still like part six, I just but it was just completely, it was, now we're getting to like a different, type of film.
Transitions nicely into part six. So that's what you're going to say, because I think Lorne might have mentioned this. The beginning of the part six, it's kind of like a Hammer horror film. I don't know if you've ever seen those old Hammer horror films from like the 1960s, the 1970s, with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
Maybe a couple. I'm not a big fan of '60s films, so but I think I've seen a couple probably.
Kind of almost like sort of gothic feel to it. Going to the church, the graveyard in the middle of the night, and the lightnings, and the grains coming down, the lightning, and it's got that sort of Hammer horror feel to it. You can also imagine like Dracula coming out of the grave. It's it's a very light-hearted sort of feel to it, and that's one of the reasons why I love part six. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's quite meta. 10 years before Scream, this was the scene where I think there's a couple like in a camper van, and Jason's just escaped from his grave and he stood in front of them, and the female character, she says, "I've seen enough scary movies to know that a guy in a mask."
And then he pulls out that little gun, which is like this big. She's like, "You ain't Dirty Harry now. What are you gonna do with that?" I mean, that scene's like where you just like have to laugh. It's just like like come on, give me a break.
Even the opening sequence is like it's James Bond, where Jason walks onto the screen and he waves his machete and the screen goes red.
Yeah,
even on James Bond, so
you can, yeah. I mean, technically, yeah.
It's not taking itself seriously at all.
Yeah,
but I mean, there are a few. Yeah, there's a few like throwaway characters in that film. I mean, there's the paintballing scene where it's like they're on some sort of business, you know, get together, and they go paintballing in the woods, and Jason just turns up and just wipes them out. That was just a complete throwaway scene. It was just, yeah, I didn't really see the point in
I
that scene.
mean, it was cool, but I agree. It was,
It
it
was in
was,
broad daylight as well, so it's kind of like it just lost a bit of its impact. But it's just in broad daylight. It just didn't have the same sort of, But one of my favorite kills in the whole franchise is, when Jason kills the sheriff and he just twists him in half.
Oh yeah. That was good. That was good, and also a pretty vicious kill from part 6, which I liked. It wasn't so much bloody, but it was vicious, and again, and this is going back, like, in horror movies, just because a kill isn't always bloody or gory doesn't mean it's still not a good kill. When he takes the girl in the trailer and he puts her face through the glass, and
Yeah,
then he pushes it and it comes out through, like, the metal on the other end, and it shapes her face. That's pretty brutal, man, if you ask me. You know, I was like, holy shit. When I first seen 6, I was like, wow. I'm like, it was a good kill.
um, yeah. Moving on. I mean, I think the one thing about 6 that what I love about, I think about part 6 and part 7 I like the most is at the end of the film, Jason ends up at the bottom of Camp Crystal Lake, and I love. That's why I love although part 7 and part 8 aren't the best films. I love the fact that at the beginning of those films, he's at the bottom of the lake. It sort of goes. It's sort of going back to the first film. I think the best start to a Friday film, he is at the bottom of the lake, and that's why I like. I mean, I love part 6 where he drowns him, and then obviously at the end of part 7, he's at the bottom of the lake again. It just for me, it's kind of like that's where he belongs. That's if when he at the beginning of any Friday film, ideally he should be at the bottom of Camp Crystal Lake.
Yeah.
That's like a perfect beginning to a Friday film for me.
Yeah. 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 The ending was good. The whole setup of how Tommy sets everything up and then gets Jason to the bottom of the lake. Um, I thought it was really good, and then continues on from part 7. Where I remember the first time I seen part 7, and then when she frees Jason, you know, because she's teleporter, whatever the word is, and she frees him, and the chains break, and I'm like, damn, I'm like, holy shit, like that scene right there was like terrifying in itself, you know. And I'm like, when I was watching, I'm like, no, no, like, what are you doing, and then again, you go to part 8, he's back, in the lake, but this time he's more, kind of similar to like part 7, obviously more. He's get more like, what's the word I'm trying to use, where his bones are showing more. He's getting more like
Decomposing, isn't he?
decomposed. Yeah. And but yeah, it was just cool, really cool, like, endings, and then beginnings to the next film, where at that point, obviously, if any horror fan was following was following the Friday the 13th series, would know that Jason, there's something supernatural there. There's something, you know, you know, he's got certain powers, or obviously, and because, I mean, let's face it, I mean, so, and yeah, it's pretty terrifying, definitely.
Right, well, I think we'll wrap things up for tonight. After probably we'll cover. I don't know if you want to come back maybe in a couple of weeks, and
Hey
we'll
man, yeah,
cover
whatever. Just shoot me an email, man, anytime.
we'll cover part 7 to. Hang on, I've lost track now. How many films is it? Seven, 8. Jason X. Jason goes to hell. The
Jason X
remake,
is gonna suck, man. Oh man.
versus Jason.
Do we have to cover Jason X, Mike? Can we just skip over it? You know.
Before we go, have you seen anything decent? Last anything decent movies?
Uh, you know what, man? I've been working a lot of doubles. What was the last horror movie I seen? I just been working so much. The last horror movie I seen was a month ago. It was some '70s movie. I forget the name of it. Um, it was free. It's free on YouTube. If you go to on your phone, like when we get off, if you type free '70s horror movies on YouTube, you'll get hundreds of movies. Movies like I never even knew were out there, man. And I just came across one. It looked interesting. I forget the name of it. What was it called? I forget the name of it, but it was really good. It was pretty terrifying, you know. But the thing is, like, the blood from the '70s horror movies, it's just, it's just so, like, different, and like it's just, you can tell it's just like,
Yeah.
uh, but it was still a good movie. It was a very terrifying movie. But that's about it, man. I might watch Suspiria tonight, because I'm off tomorrow. So, I love Suspiria. I
Oh,
did,
well, judging
so
by your name, you got one on YouTube. I gathered that.
yeah,
How
yeah, yeah,
it kind of gives it away.
yeah,
Are
yeah. I love
the remake,
Suspiria, man.
watching the remake or the original?
Tonight I'm probably gonna watch the remake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I seen the original. I think only like two, three times, and that's enough for me. I think the remake is so much better. That's my opinion. I just think it's so much better. I think it's so much scarier and darker, and better actors. Tilda Swinton, Dakota Johnson, Mia Goth. Um, I just, I mean, the original is, I would say it's a classic masterpiece. Absolutely, no question about it. I like Inferno. A lot of people don't like Inferno. I like Inferno. Have you seen Inferno, Mike?
I've not seen it though. I need to
It's
watch it. I,
free. It's free on YouTube. I would suggest watching it next time you get a chance. It's good. I thought it was good. It continues. It's like Suspiria Part Two, but with a different witch. Uh,
yeah.
but it's part of like the Three Witches trilogy, but it was good. Like the whole color scheme was really good and had some really scary shots. And I don't want to give anything away, but I think you'll like it. You know, I would definitely recommend checking out Inferno.
I mean, I have seen the original Suspiria, and I mean, I like the film, but I think I think it's a phrase that Piers has used a few times. It's like I respect it more than I like it, and the cinematography and I love the color in
Yes,
that film is amazing. But
absolutely.
I kind of like find myself, admiring the color scheme more than I do the
Yeah,
actual.
it was beautiful. Absolutely. I'm not taking away anything from the original Suspiria. I love. Well, I don't love the original Suspiria. I like it, and I give it the respect, like you said. I think I respect it more than I like it. But the 2018 one, I just love. I just think it's just so much more darker. The cinematography, the visual effects, just everything. I just think I just love it, and the cast too. A lot of these are names that I've loved for years. Dakota Johnson, Tilda Swinton, Angela Winkler, who's probably not well known. I don't know if she's German or an Italian or French actress. She has a YouTube page, but she hasn't posted anything in years. I think she was a singer and a ballet dancer. And then they hire like a bunch of other like German actresses who not a lot of people know because they shot it in Italy on a mountaintop, in an abandoned hotel. So they brought in a lot of like foreign actresses, and they did great too. But like the main stars like Dakota and Tilda and Mia Goth, and Luca did a great job, and it was just a really good movie. If it made more money, there would have been a sequel, but um, he said that probably, you know, at least for the foreseeable future, they probably won't be because it just didn't make enough money. But then again, it had a limited release, and it sucked, man. I would have loved to see, part 2. Oh man. So, but we'll see what happens. You never know nowadays with horror. You just never know. Something is said one year, and then next year, 2 years, 3 years, something happens that you don't expect it to happen. So.
Anyway, let's wrap things up for tonight then. That was a really good chat. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, man. Good times.
Are you on Pizz's stream tomorrow?
Tomorrow, I don't think so. I'm not sure. I know it's my day off. I have a lot of things to do, so I don't think I'll be on there now.
Right then. Anyway, cheers, mate. I'll hit you up in the emails next time we want to do
Absolutely, man.
Maybe 2 weeks today.
Yeah, man. Sure, anytime, dude.
For the rest of the franchise, then, yeah.
Yeah. Email me anytime, man.
Yeah. Cheers, Al. Thanks.
All right, later, Mike. Take care, bud.
All right. Cheers, bud.